Hello everybody and welcome to another Twilight Zone review. Today it is Season 5, Episode 19, Night Call, written by Richard Matheson and starring Gladys Cooper as Miss Alva Keene. And this is a very solid Twilight Zone episode. It's creepy and suspenseful and I really like the premise. And Gladys Cooper, who gives her third Twilight Zone performance, is excellent as usual. Unfortunately, I have some issues with the end of the episode. Some might find it to their satisfaction, but it just didn't work for me, and it really does hurt the episode somewhat, but it's still a solid episode overall up to that point. So we start with an elderly lady in bed, and her name is Alva. She's our main character. And she gets a call on the telephone, which seems normal enough, except that nobody answers on the other end. And then she gets the call a second time, and again, no answer, so this concerns her. So that's the setup for our episode, which is fine. The next day we find out some important things. We find out this lady cannot walk. She goes around in a wheelchair, and her housekeeper comes in, and she'll be a character, although not really that important to the story. And Elva's on the phone with a lady named Miss Finch, I believe is her name, and she's talking about the call she got last night. And the lady is explaining because of the storm that was going on, there's a lot of wires down, there's a lot of problems. Maybe that's why you got the calls. Maybe something weird happened. But we know this is Twilight Zone, and that's not going to be the case. So Elva's sitting. She's now out as the day has started, and she gets the mail. And she goes through that, and when she's done with that, she gets yet another call. And again, there's just this static type noise on the other end. So she asks the housekeeper about it, and the lady says she doesn't hear anything on the other end. When she puts the phone up, there's no noise at all. So now we're wondering just what's going on. So then nighttime comes, and Elva's by herself again, and she gets another call. And this time we get more. We get a moaning noise on the other end. So Elva's even more concerned about this, and then all of a sudden she hears the word hello from the other end. So now we're getting a voice to go with this, but Elva's still not sure what's going on. So we go to the next day, and Elva's talking to Miss Finch again and telling her what happens. And Miss Finch says, I don't know what's going on, but I'll have a man check your line if this continues to happen. So then we go to the next scene, and Elva's having a drink, tea I think it is, and she gets yet another call, and she takes the phone off the hook. She figures, if I don't answer this and I leave the phone off the hook, they can't call me. But then curiosity gets the better of her, so she puts the phone back on the hook, and of course, at this point, she gets the call again and again, and she just keeps getting this same hello, hello, hello all the time. So she calls Margaret, the housekeeper, and tells her what's happening, and Margaret tries to calm her down. She says, it must just be a bad connection, the same thing that Miss Finch, the telephone lady, told her, but Elva's not buying it, and this time she keeps the phone off the hook. So Elva's in bed at night, and she's upset, and having the phone off the hook is now bothering her because that makes a noise as well. So she puts the phone back on the hook, and of course Elva gets another call, and this time the call says, where are you? I want to talk to you. So we're getting more and more each time. This is done well. It's built up well. It's got a nice creepy mood to it. So Elva's genuinely freaked now, and I can't say I blame her, which ties in with the end of the episode and where my problems lie. So at this point, we go to the next day, and the phone rings again, and this is a good mislead because I just assumed it was this voice again, but it's not. It's Miss Finch. I like the way this scene was handled. And she calls and says a man did come, and he traced the calls, and that there was a fallen wire at the cemetery, and that nobody could be calling her from this location because there's no phone there, and even if there was, there would be no working wire, so there'd be no way to get the calls. So Elva's insisting she got these calls, so she decides to visit the cemetery. So Elva and Margaret both go to visit the cemetery, and at this point they find the downed wire, and it turns out it is on the grave of a man named Brian. And then we get the whole backstory. It turns out that Brian was Elva's fiance, and a week before they were supposed to get married, he died. This was caused because Elva was driving. She insisted on driving, and she lost control of the vehicle, and he basically fell out the window as the car went into a tree, and he passed away. He didn't make it. This is also how she was crippled and why she can't walk, so she says Brian's trying to reach out to me. So now she understands what's happening. So she's actually kind of relieved and happy about this because she says she won't be lonely anymore. Apparently she's been lonely all these years. So that's kind of interesting. So at this point, Elva's by herself alone after Margaret leaves, and she picks up the phone and she wants to talk to Brian. And she says, "Are you there?" And after a few seconds he responds. He said, "Elva, you said to leave me alone, and I always do what you say." So basically he's now just going to ignore her and she will still be alone. And then we get the closing narration. And Rod Serling basically kind of says she brought this on herself. And I just don't buy this ending. It might seem clever at first, but think about it. If somebody that you didn't know who it was or who the voice was calling you on the other end of a phone, would you be that receptive to go talk to the person? Once she found out the information at the gravesite, I thought she was very receptive to this idea. So this seems a little bit cruel and even maybe a little mean-spirited, and maybe that's the point, but this just didn't sit well with me, especially after the closing narration. It seems like they're putting all the blame on Elva here, and I'm just not buying it. To me, she acted fairly logically. So overall, Night Call is a good episode with an ending I don't like. Like I said, others might find the ending to their satisfaction, but I just didn't buy it. So I give Night Call a 3 out of 5. Still an episode worth watching at least once to see what you think about it. So a 3 out of 5 for Night Call, and as always, thank you very much for watching.